And it's time for Game Changer Part 3. The winds of change are flowing and blowing very hard across the nations of the world. The loud bangs, explosions, all the bloodletting, the rivers of blood are nothing but the death throes of an age that must go. A new dawn is going to break. And this time around, Africa must not be caught napping. We start Game Changer Part 3 today with a word of wisdom. And this is a word of wisdom. This is something I've always heard from, I used to hear from Professor Akijobi, who's gone to glory right now. But he said something to me. I don't know who the author is. But he says, once you're robbed of your past, you will settle for any future. Now, in failure engineering, this is something that once you see that happening anywhere, once anybody begins to tamper with your history, you need to watch out, because you will be dealing with a superior intelligence that has ulterior motives. If the Rwandans had taken note of this kind of things in 1894, when von Gotzen arrived in Urundi, Rwanda, I bet you there will have never ever been any genocide in Rwanda. So when people want to tamper with your history, open your eyes, shine your eyes, and make sure you start thinking, because they must be up to something. Now, this is one of the reasons why you find out that the Bible, even though you and I today who profess Christianity are New Testament believers, you will find out that the Bible actually still contains records of the Old Testament. So even divine wisdom agrees with the fact that once you're robbed of your past, once your history is deleted, you'll be prepared to settle for just any future. So when you see people who insist on making sure that the children's children know where they're coming from, you're dealing with the people who have somewhere that they are going. Now, why do we need a game changer? This is Game Changer 3. What is a game changer anyhow? A game changer is a newly introduced element or factor that changes an existing situation or activity in a significant way. Now, you agree with me, the entire world right now is waiting for a game changer. Look at immigration issues, definitions of family, the new definitions of family, old landmarks are shifting, and every African knows this definitely, that we need a game changer, if nowhere else in the world, in Africa. And more so in Nigeria right now, where the dark clouds are gathering in the horizon. We need a game changer. What is that? We need to introduce an element or a factor that changes this existing situation or the kind of activities going on in this country right now in a significant way. And the news I have for you is that I do believe that some of us who are listening to us here right now, you could be the game changer that the world is waiting for. You could be the game changer that your nation is waiting for. You might be the game changer that Nigeria is waiting for. You could be the one. So the three things we want to do in Game Changer 3 as we start this time around, we want to recognize game changers. It's you. You are the greatest game changer. We want to be able to equip the game changers, and then we're getting ready to ignite the game changers. Now, I said to you when we started Game Changer Chapter 1 that there was something that happened to me a while back which has made all the difference in my life completely. I read a book written in 1903. That book ended with a prayer, and I'm going to pray the same prayer for you as we start again. It's the prayer that W.E.B. Du Bois prayed in 1903. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African American to bag a doctorate degree in Harvard University. Something happened to him. He caught a revelation. As a matter of fact, light can be so powerful that if you've been in darkness for a long time, light can actually hurt your eyes. And I sort of suspect that that's the reason why W.E.B. Du Bois could no longer live in America in his days. He actually moved to Ghana, where he lived and died. I had the opportunity to go to Ghana to see the house where W.E.B. Du Bois lived before his demise in Ghana. Now, what is his prayer? He prayed the prayer. He says, "Hear my cry, O God." Published this book in 1906, ended the book with this prayer. "Hear my cry, O God, let the reader, and guarantee, O Lord, that this book will not fall stillborn. Let it not be like an abortion into wilderness of the world. He prayed and says, let there spring, gentle one, from the leaves of this book, vigor of thought. He was praying, published 1903. He was praying for us that when you read this book, it will cause you to think. And not only think, he began to talk about thoughtful deed. That your thoughts will lead to actions. To become a game changer, this prayer must work for you, especially if you're a man of color. And he began to talk about how that there will be a wonderful harvest if these game changers can be introduced. And he said pointedly that the ears of the guilty must tingle with truth, and millions will sigh for the day of righteousness, which will exalt all nations of the world. Now, he went on and began to point out that the brotherhood of man today, or in his time, and still today, is a mere mockery. But he pointed out that there is going to be a glorious harvest, a glorious and a wonderful harvest, when all the nations of the world will be able to sit together in peace and harmony, and there will be prosperity all around, and there will be no oppression for anyone at all. Now, he believed this, and I believe it. W.E.B. Du Bois prayed that prayer. When I heard that prayer, it tore my chest open because I'd been reading the book. Now, one of the things you need to know if you want to be a game changer, especially if you're Nigerian, African, especially, you want to be a game changer, is the revelation of the Tertium Quid. As you read that book, published in 1903, The Souls of Black Folk, you'll find out that he spoke about certain streams of thought that were dominant in 1903. He spoke about the sincere and passionate belief that somewhere between man and cattle, God had created a tertium quid. What's a tertium quid? It's a third indefinite, undefined thing that's related to two known things. So between man and cattle, some people believe that God has created a third thing that is neither man nor cattle, but is related to both man and cattle, and called it a Negro, an African. A clownish, simple creature, at times even lovable within its limitations, but strictly foreordained to live within the veil of ignorance. To be sure, he says, after the thought lurks an afterthought. Now, what does he say? He says, some of them, the people who carried this thought in 1903, went ahead and said, some of them, with favoring chance, might become men. Some Africans might become men or aspire to become men. But in sheer self-defense, we dare not let them. And we must build about them walls so high, and hang between them and the light a veil so thick that they will not even think of breaking through. Now, this is where the imagery of the wall comes up. When you talk about the wall, you're talking about a veil so thick that it keeps a people in darkness, the tertium quid, and that was meant to be the African. The second African American to graduate from Harvard University also, Woodson G. Carter, also wrote a book that I read in the 1800s as well, 1833 I think. And he wrote about the miseducation of the Negro. He began to put his hand on the program that is used to turn men from the natural state of the image and likeness of God and to break them into the revelation of the tertium quid, where you are neither man nor beast, but you're related to both man or beast, and the products of your hand and the thoughts of your head will manifest the fact that you've been programmed. What did Woodson G. Carter write in his book? He says, if you can control a man's thoughts, you can control his thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. When you determine what a man shall think, you don't have to concern yourself about what he will do. He said, if you make a man feel that he is inferior, you don't have to compel him to accept an inferior status. Once it has entered him that he is inferior, you don't have to compel him again, for he himself will seek it. He will seek it. If you make a man think that he's justly an outcast, you don't have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. He will go to the back door without being told. And if there's no back door, his very nature will demand one and will even create one. Woodson G. Carter, the miseducation of the Negro. These are books that we should read, but one of the things I know is that the Tashom Quid have been programmed not to read. Now you're going to ask me, what does this have to do with the changes going all around the world, more so in Nigeria? The winds of change are blowing. There is a program working with us. Until African leaders begin to understand programming, we are going to be in deep trouble. Between Genesis chapter 1, verse 25, where God talked about the creation of the beast, of the cattle, and the things that creep on the face of the earth, and God said it was good, and verse 26, where God said, let us make man in our image and our likeness, let us make him creative, let us give him dominion over all things apart from man. Between verse 25 and verse 26, somebody created another verse of scripture, and that Tashom Quid, created in between verse 25 and verse 26, I tell you, is the greatest source of sorrow all over the world. It is the root cause of the Boko Haram. It is the root cause of the Fulani militant murderous narrative that's going on in Nigeria. It is the root cause of the backwardness, the return of kidnapping, the return of slave trade. These things you must know if you are going to be a game changer that is going to bring us results in this season that we are. Now, I have a word for Nigeria right now because by virtue of my work in the field, I get a lot of reports. I have a nose to the ground. And as a minister of the gospel, I can tell us that right now, there is a greater part of the Nigerian church that is panicking. And there are many pulpits that are fueling the fear into hysteria. They're taking advantage of the ignorance of the people. And people are talking about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We're talking about if they're killing us as Christians, let's kill them back. We're talking about a narrative where Christians are supposed to be taking up arms, not just for self-defense, but to go into offense now. It's very subtle, but it's very dangerous. And let me tell you something. What is plaguing Nigeria, which we're trying to unfold to you, the knowledge we're trying to give to you to understand what is happening in Nigeria, until a doctor accurately diagnoses a problem, his prescriptions will always be wrong. Right now, a lot of prescriptions in Nigeria are just wrong. And I want us to know that if we go for violence, going into the offensive, we will lose. Sanity will lose, righteousness will lose, goodness will lose. You will be amazed how devastating it will be if we reject God's solution and go for a carnal solution based on fear. What's the word I had? I said to you, go to Deuteronomy chapter 1 from verse 41. God began to speak here and he says, look, the people are agreeing that they've sinned against God, right? From verse 41, Deuteronomy chapter 1. When God said to them, look, go out and do battle, do X, Y, and Z, they said, look, we can't go, we're afraid. They were paralyzed. For whatever reason, they refused to go. And then afterwards, they went and thought about it, and then came back to God, and they went to God and said, now we're ready to fight. We've put on all our armor, we're ready to go. And hear what the Bible says. The Bible says, and the Lord said unto me, say unto them, don't go up, don't fight, for I am not among you, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spoke to you, and you would not hear, but you rebelled against the commandment of the Lord, and went presumptuously up unto the hill. And the Amorites who dwelled in that mountain came out against you, and chased you, as bees do, and destroyed you in Seir, even unto Hormah. And you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not hearken to your voice, nor give ear to you. Go to the book of Proverbs chapter 1 and go and read with clarity. When God's counsel is rejected, if you try to impose your counsel on God, you will lose terribly. I'm bringing out this warning again that we are not going to go to arms because there is a wisdom that is better than weapons of war. We are here today in the Nigerian situation because we rejected the wisdom that is better than weapons of war. Simply because there are many who don't understand how it works. To employ the wisdom that is better than weapons of war, you must understand how to use the word of wisdom, divine wisdom. You must understand how to use the word of knowledge. You must be ready to pay attention to prophetic utterances. You must test them, test the spirit. But once it's a prophetic utterance traceable to God, you must be able to hold on to it. You must be ready to pay attention to apostolic sharpsight, and most important of all, divine timing. Divine timing. Whenever your enemies begin to move and do certain things, God will come to you and speak to you beforehand And there are some things like they say, a stitch in time saves 9. Now, partial obedience or obedience after the fact does not work when you want to use the wisdom that is better than weapons of war. The rivers of blood flowing in Nigeria today, without a shadow of doubt, let God be true and let every man, every general overseer, every apostle, every prophet, let them be liars, but let God be true. God loves Nigeria. He does not want bloodshed. Look, this thing is happening all over the world. But just like every nation of the world, Nigeria got its ample warning. The church was spoken to. When God comes to Nigeria today to find out what is going on, he's not going to call the federal government. He's going to look for the salt of the earth. He's going to look for the light of the world. He's going to come to his church, first of all. The rivers of blood flowing in Nigeria today became rivers because when it was still trickles of blood, God spoke, apostolic sharp sight, prophetic utterances, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, but we rejected it because we had our own agenda. And now that things have seemed to have gone awry, instead of returning to God to apologize, to repent, and to get the wisdom that's better than weapons of war, that will still work to stop the rivers of blood and the devaluation of human worth today, instead, there are some rogue prophets inciting people into hysteria. It will not bring the glory of God. It will waste all the work that has been done even by men like Ajayi Crowther. All the people who died, Mary Slessor, those who did so much to get us to where we are today, their labors will just be in vain. We must not go that way. Now, having said that, we must understand what is going on in Nigeria. Now, to understand what is going on in Nigeria, you must be able to know that there's a program, and that program is the greatest program of corruption. I'm not talking about financial corruption here. I'm talking about the mother of all corruption, the corruption that devalues human worth. It's so clever, it's a global problem. Nigerians need to understand that everything you see in Nigeria is a global problem with a local face. It's a satanic challenge that is covered by religion. If you answer it with religion, what you're doing is that you're using petrol to try and quench a fire. So what are the things we must understand? Those who are going to make a difference, the game changer we need. You need divine wisdom. So listen to me now. Devaluation of human worth is the grossest corruption. Man was made in the image and likeness of God, and once you do certain things to man, you introduce a verse that is between verse 25 and 26 in Genesis chapter 1. What you're doing is that you are triggering the strategy of the beast. The name of the beast, the image of the beast, the number of the beast, 666. It's already at work. If you say you don't believe me, just listen right now and let me explain to you before you put your children's children into further trouble. I used to enjoy to go to Dubai 6-7 times on holidays. I passed through on my way for consultancies and things like that, on my way to ministry in other nations of the world. And I was very curious. I wanted to know, why is Dubai doing so well? And going to Dubai, I saw all the cutting-edge technology. I saw how it had, look, frankly speaking, in those days, you go to America, you go to Britain to see cutting-edge technology and all that. But right now, you go to Dubai. I wanted to know why. And then I picked up a book, My Vision, reaching the subtitle, Challenges in the Race to Excellence, written by Al Maktoum, His Royal Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. And in the first chapter, he said something, my heart sank. My heart exploded when I read W.E.B. Du Bois' book in 1903. When I read this book, written in this modern times, my heart sank. What did he say? He says, with each new day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up knowing he must outrun the fastest lion or perish. At the same time, a lion stares and stretches, knowing he must outrun the fastest gazelle or starve. It is no different for the human race, is what he said. Whether you consider yourself a gazelle or a lion, you simply have to run faster than others. I disagree. This is why Jesus Christ came. This is why there's divine wisdom. If you apply this, what you're doing without knowing is called the mark of the beast. Listen, the human race is not like that. And stop considering yourself to be a gazelle or to be a lion. Because what you're doing without knowing is promoting the mark of the beast. This is what is fueling the Boko Haram. This is what is fueling, the Fulani narrative that is trying to tear this nation apart. And if care is not taken, the Almajiri revolution that is up ahead, I tell you which evil minds are planning. This is the same principle that is upholding it. Why? The moment a man begins to think like a lion or a predator, it's a deformity. It's a mark of the beast. The moment you're able to make some people think like gazelles or like cattle, it's a deformity. It's the mark of the beast. Now, it means you want to divide the whole world into predators and prey. Unfortunately, while we were sleeping, we didn't realize this, but everything in Nigeria works like that. Everything from politics to business, religion, governance, you name it, somewhere along the way we allowed a hijack to go on. So what we're seeing today, Satan had been plotting it for a long time, decades, if not centuries. The value of human worth has dropped so much in Nigeria because we have a predator-prey relationship in everywhere you turn to. Look, when I read the book by the Sheikh in Dubai, I heard him make some quotes and references to Ibn Khaldun. He was an Arab philosopher who was born in 1332, died in 1406. Now, the references he made, he talked about how they said that those who have been conquered, listen to this, they have this habit of imitating the mannerisms, the language, the dressing, the food, you name it, of those who conquered them. And he's right. This is the reason why in southern Nigeria today, we wear suits, not necessarily tropical suits, three-piece suits under the hot sun. We wear ties, we wear stockings, put on wigs, we drink tea, munch biscuits in a greater quantum, speaking colloquial English, in a greater quantum than even when there were white people in Nigeria. They may have left in 1960, but they left a program behind that is producing all these things. The same thing in northern Nigeria. There's a program running in northern Nigeria where you want to be more Arab than the Arab, you want to be like the Arab, speak like the Arab, speak his language, do everything Arabic. It's an inferiority complex in northern Nigeria. And then when you see the fact that when they were going to leave us with a country called Nigeria, you mixed things that seem unmixable together. You mix the failure engineering already of the Arabic narrative in northern Nigeria. You now mix it with the Western failure engineering narrative in southern Nigeria. You put it together to create something that we call deterministic chaos. A chaos that is generated, but those in it don't know it's generated. This comes from the mind of predator nations. Because you see, the architecture of thought that the lion has is far ahead of that of the gazelle. Ibn Khaldun, I began to study Ibn Khaldun, that philosopher that has shaped the thought of Arabs. And let me tell you some of his other quotes. He says, therefore, the Negro nations, the Zanj, are as a rule submissive to slavery. They have little that is human and have attributes that are quite similar to those of dumb animals. He went ahead and said again, beyond to the south, there's no civilization in the proper sense. There are only humans who are closer to dumb animals than to rational beings. They live in thickets and caves, they eat herbs and unprepared grain, they frequently eat each other, and they cannot be considered human beings. Now, Ibn Khaldun, 1332 to 1406, we read the book by, you heard my quote from W.E.B. Du Bois' book in published 1903. It's the same thing they're talking about. It's the mark of the beast, the Tashon Quid. And guess what? When a Nigerian is approaching immigration in Dubai, do they see a lion coming or do they see a gazelle? You see, these are things we need to interrogate, we need to think properly. This is exactly what God does not want on the earth. We want advancement. Yes, we want results. But we want it after a godly divine sort that will promote unity and harmony, peace, and will give more value to human worth rather than decrease the value of human worth. I want to let you know that this thing is global. And when this program is applied anywhere, it works for a minimum of 650 years, producing what you're looking at in Nigeria, what you're looking at in all African nations. All African nations put together, African Union, Our share of global trade is 2%. This is the product of the Tasham Quid. Human beings cannot produce such things. Our contribution, all African nations put together, plus Nigeria and Ghana, Senegal, South Africa, put all of us together, 10 dependent territories. You know our contribution to the global economy? The GDP, the contribution to the GDP is less than 2.5%, is about 2.5% of the global. These are not results of human beings. What we are managing that we are calling economies in our countries here are not economies, they are sham economies. They are like what happens when you go to a zoo and you scratch your head, the monkey scratches his head. If you throw him a shirt, he sees you wearing one, the monkey too will wear a shirt. And that is why until our eyes open, we won't understand why there's so much chaos, so much bloodletting. Why, listen, before a man can slice another human being, slice a pregnant woman open, there must be a program that turns him from a man into a predator, into a beast. And until we are able to understand that program, which holds up the Boko Haram, the program that holds up, listen to me, the Arab nations know it, the Western nations know it, the whole world knows it. The only set of people who don't seem to realize it are the people who have been programmed to be the other side of the mark of the beast, the prey, not the predators. We're talking about the African. In 1798, if you wanted to know who an African was and you were British or you were educated, you went to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Look at the definition of the Negro that you will get. Homo peli nigra is a name given to a variety of the human species who are entirely black and are found in the torrid zone, especially in that part of Africa which lies within the tropics. In the complexion of Negroes, we meet with various shades, but they otherwise differ from other men in all the features of their face. Now begin to check. Round cheeks, high cheekbones, a forehead somewhat elevated, a short, broad, flat nose, thick lips, small ears, ugliness, and irregularity of shape characterize their external appearance. The Negro woman, the African woman, have their loins greatly depressed and very large buttocks, which give the back the shape of a saddle. Vices the most notorious seem to be the portion of this unhappy race. Idleness, treachery, revenge, cruelty, impudence, stealing, lying, profanity, debauchery, nastiness, and intemperance are said to have extinguished the principles of natural law and to have reproofs of conscience. They are strangers to every sentiment of compassion and are an awful example of the corruption of man left to himself. Homo peli nigra, Encyclopedia Britannica in 1798. I don't know about you if you think that this thing is a joke, you don't understand how programming works, and what is the real program behind the Boko Haram, behind the Fulani headsman narrative. If you still keep thinking it is religious, you are not only deceived, and if you're telling other people that it's primarily religious, you have become also a deceiver yourself, because you reject the mind of Christ, you refuse to interrogate these things properly to find out that this is a supremacist narrative. It is lion against gazelle, but it just wears a cover of religion to perpetrate its act. And that's why you find out, I said so from the beginning in Nigeria, by the grace of God, we began to share from 1998, 1999, that what you call the Boko Haram is coming, suicide bombings will come, bloodshed will abound in Nigeria. We traveled north, south, east, west, raising an alarm, trying our best to get everybody ready for what was coming. And let me tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, it is a supremacist move. Those people that you're calling Fulani, whatever, they change shape. They change their shape from Boko Haram, they change to Fulani. Tomorrow they will change the shape to Al-Majiri right before your eyes. Let me tell you the truth, it's an arcane intelligence. It's based on the mark of the beast. If the church doesn't know it, we will diagnose wrongly and lead many to perdition. Now, if you want to know how this thing works in many other parts of the world as well, you need to look at this video. It's a popular one, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. It's a very popular Supreme Court ruling on segregation in schools. Brown versus Board of Education. It's an experiment that they call the black doll, white doll experiment. And it was conducted in the 40s, I think, by Professor Clark, husband and wife, Mimi and I think Jay Clark. And what did they do? They had 4 dolls, 2 white, 2 black, identical, in dressing, in everything, and then they took children and began to ask children a lot of questions. Which doll is ugly? Which one is beautiful? Which one looks like a criminal? Which one looks honest? Which doll is the one that is desirable? Which one looks like you? And let me tell you the truth, black, white children, half-caste, quadroons, octoroons, you name it, it was unanimous that children looked at white dolls as being supreme, beautiful, honest, progressive, and associated the black dolls. That same test was repeated again in 1997 or thereabouts. The results have still not changed significantly. What am I saying to you? That was proof that you can program a people unknown to them. You can put inferiority in some of them and put superiority in another set altogether. How about Otabenga? Did you ever get to hear about Otabenga? Did you know there was a time, in order to induce superiority in those described as white and inferiority in those as black, a pygmy was captured in Congo and exhibited in was put in a zoo alongside orangutans, alongside monkeys. They sharpened his teeth to look that part. His name was Otabenga. 1906, he was on display in the Bronx Zoo. The Bronx Zoo. He was on display. He committed suicide in 1920 because he was no animal. They made him carry chimpanzees, monkeys. They throw bananas at him. Look, similar zoological exhibitions were going on all over Europe, in Amsterdam, in Paris, in London, in Stockholm, in Poland, you name it. It was all over the world. The so-called white world. You see, what were they doing? The children will go to the zoos and see blacks in cages. Let's just watch this for a few minutes. Otabenga was his name. $40,000 whites daily coming to watch him.
Believe it or not, 40,000 people a day come to see this exhibition.
Classical conditioning. Superiority to the whites who are watching, and inferiority to the blacks who watch. It's a clever program, powerful program, brilliant, as evil as it is, but we must consider brilliant. Now, if you think it's coincidental, in America, for instance, where every time I travel to America, because we have been able to diagnose this program, I can tell you it is still at work. The program is still at work in America till today. Beneath the surface, beneath everything, is still churning out inferiority complexes, especially in the African American fold. The prayer W.E.B. Du Bois prayed in 1903 is still largely ignored by the African world, the African American world, you name it, till today. We still don't understand that it's a program. We are programmed to fight one another. We're programmed to be inferior. It works. How does it work? You break the spirit of a man, you crush his soul, then you yoke his body for exploitation, economic or spiritual. And you do it on an industrial scale, and it will last from generation to generation, regenerating itself. I've studied it. This is what is happening in Nigeria. Henry Berry, Virginia House of Delegates in 1832. Listen to this. He said something: we have, as far as possible, closed every avenue by which light may enter their minds. If we could extinguish their capacity to see the light, our work would be complete. They will then be on the same level with the beasts in the field, and we would be safe. I'm not certain we would not do it if we could find the process and that on the plea of necessity. He was just being diplomatic. They had found the process. It's a global process. The Arabs use it. Caucasians use it. Nations of the world who have discovered it, they use it. Just as in the contemporary arrangement of the world today, it is the man of color, the African, that is the prime victim, who is the prey, while others are predator. There are predator nations and there are prey nations. 54 nations of Africa, 10 dependent territories, are not predators. We are the prey. And it continues because it's based on programming, and we have refused to use the mind of Christ, or at least get the architecture of thought to decode what is behind this thing. The violence you see in the Boko Haram and all that is just one simple part of it. What do you think was at play in the 1936 Olympics in Nazi Germany? What did Adolf Hitler depend upon when he prophesied of a 1,000-year reign of his Reich? Watch this carefully. The Olympics in Berlin 1936 was meant to showcase Aryan supremacy, predator prey. But something that God did, when you look, you'll see one black man representing the African race, J.C. Owens, picked up 4 gold medals. 4 gold medals. Just winning his 4 gold medals alone, beating the Aryans, who were supposed to be the supremacists, was a statement. This is how God put Hitler to shame. This was part of the beginning of his end. J.C. Owens, 4 gold medals. He put to shame the theory of Aryan supremacy that Adolf Hitler was trying to establish. Adolf Hitler did not think that black people warranted being called humans. As far as he was concerned, any man of color, even 1% black blood, listen to me, you are an animal as far as it was concerned. So you see, you are dealing with something global. So it doesn't matter whether it's Arab, it doesn't matter whether it's Western, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. There is a supremacist agenda. In some cases, it's very subtle, so you have to try hard to detect it. You know what I'm saying? But in some cases, it's very crude and raw. And that's why you can see that of the Boko Haram. It's a hydra. It has a head in every area. We're going to talk about it later on. We're going to be revealing more and more about these things as we go. But if you think that this programming is not a reality, you're wasting your time. It's a reality, and it is the root program. This is the reason why we cannot defeat the Boko Haram, the Fulani headsman narrative, or the next explosion that is coming if we allow it. It's a supremacist agenda. It has a head in all the mountains and spheres of influence. It conditions people. The use of terror is just one aspect of it. Ever before the use of terror, it first of all induces into all of us an inferiority complex. Nigeria was put together based on this. It's called failure engineering. When we get serious that we want our children to be free, we're going to realize that for Nigeria to succeed, for Africa to succeed, for global harmony to come on this globe, on this piece, on this earth, we're going to have to revisit these things. And those who know that program, actually, the Western world is coming to a crossroad where it is going to have to admit that it knows about this program and that it has a very subtle way of using this program. And that's why 65% of raw materials comes out of Africa to the rest of the nations of the world, and yet all African economies put together don't have up to 2%, 2.5% of global trade. You will think, nah, maybe they're lazy now. No. It's conditioning. You need to understand it. It's an arcane wisdom. It's an ancient wisdom. It's a satanic wisdom. It uses religion it uses media, it uses governance. Next time we're going to be on Game Changer, part 4, part 5. I'm going to be bringing it down to the level of Nigeria to show you how it is working. Let me tell you something right now. People are complaining about one president or the other. Listen, it doesn't matter who is president of Nigeria. It's a program that is working against Nigeria. There's a conditioning going on. The implementation of terror is just a crude application. Already, the value of human worth is so low all over the country that young boys, Nigerians, Ghanaians, Senegalese, young ladies, right now the value of their human worth is so low, it is unbelievable. Arab slave markets in Africa, you can buy Nigerians for $300. One of my friends for years, Baroness Cox, God bless that woman, I know when she used to go to Sudan to go buy slaves so that she could set them free. They're so careful because they manipulate media as well. So what am I trying to point out? Even in southern part of the country, how much value is there to human worth? The predator-prey principle is at work. Ritual killings have returned. We don't seem to be able to think our way through. The entire Nigerian budget, the appropriation bill that was signed, comes about $30-something billion. How can a nation with 200 million people be talking about a budget of, I'm wondering, all those big names they mentioned in the economy, economics and all that, do they really know what they're doing? Or is this just that they're the tachyon quid? They've been trained in foreign institutions to uphold these programs because it's so subtle they can't detect it? I passed through one airport a few weeks ago. The budget of that airport alone is about $20-something billion. One airport. Now, the difference between the Arabic application of the Islamist narrative of Boko Haram, of the Fulani thing, and what's going on in Nigeria, the only difference is that their own form is very crude and vicious. The other forms that are at work are so subtle. And you know what? As long as the value of human worth in southern Nigeria, southeast, southwest, you name it, is as low as it is, as long as the predator principle is at work, as long as potholes are all over roads, people are dying, nobody cares, as long as young girls are crossing oceans, many drowning. Why? Because they prefer a life of prostitution in Europe to coming to staying in Nigeria. As long as all these things are happening, listen to me, a church that is practicing predator-prey principle. In part 4, part 5 of Game Changer, I'm going to show you the lives of the returnees. People like Jai Crowder. I'm going to show you the architecture of thought that comes from above. You're going to see the difference between that and what is prevalent in the Nigerian church today. As long as in the Nigerian church today there are predators and there are prey, we can never defeat the predator-prey principle of Fulani or the Boko Haram. Why? If you yourself are practicing something, how do you rebuke somebody else for doing it? Now, there are a lot of ministers today who are on the pulpit who are making a lot of noise to distract the flock, to deceive the flock, to make the flock to get into ammunitions, into fighting, into killing, to send them to hell, to make them reject the wisdom of God, and to turn their attention away from the root of this whole problem, which is the corruption, devaluation of human worth. The church in Nigeria is one of the strongest upholders of corruption in this country. How do we rebuke them on the other side of the divide? So, truth be told, young men are crossing deserts, drinking urine, dying, being abducted. They're carrying our children. Igbos, the Yorubas, TVs, you name it. And they are selling their organs, organ harvesting. And yet we can't recognize that it is the same thing that is powering the Boko Haram. It's the same thing that is powering the Fulani narrative. There's a global intelligence. It's satanic. It's the mark of the beast. For every preacher who ignores a truth that I tell you these things so that you can prove them from scripture. For every preacher who deliberately ignores this and tries to show that he's brave, making noise. I have been in the fields with families that have lost their children, with people I have known who've died in the fields. I always cherish the memory of people like Archbishop Achigili. Go and ask who he was in Kaduna State. Saidu Dogo, who at one time was jailed, while Al-Majiris who had blood on their clothes were carried out expressly by the instruction of the serving governor at that time, put in trucks, and they were released. Why are we pretending as if we don't know what is going on? Is the church not supposed to be the pillar and the ground of truth? If we lack the courage to apply a wisdom better than weapons of war, what hope is there for this country? Listen to me. Despite the rivers of blood that are flowing in this country right now, in the midst of all this darkness, we have come to a place where the game changer can easily be applied and we will reap a glorious future. But let me say this again, for all those who are stoking religion. Trying to use religion to stop this narrative is like trying to use petrol to put out a fire. By the time we get the Game Changer series to the level where we're going to be explaining to you how this program was put together, the particular program, supremacist program, working with the Boko Haram and the Fulani thing, the foreign intelligence behind it, how it takes advantage, it will kill both Christians and Muslims alike if you stand in its way. Why are we pretending as if we don't know it's slaughtering Muslims as well? Listen, in Africa it has a very crude raw form. Some people sent me videos, something to do with America. Listen, the religious mix in America is not the religious mix in Nigeria. Secondly, the degree of evaluation of human worth in America is different from the evaluation of human worth in Nigeria. The architecture of thought there is different from that which is here. Religion will not solve this problem. Let me close this session by showing you another film on classical conditioning. You need to see this. You need to see that there's a principle truly by which such programs can work before we begin to talk about the bloodletting in Nigeria. It's called classical conditioning. It was an experiment carried out with 5 monkeys.
A group of scientists placed 5 monkeys in a cage and in the middle a ladder with bananas on top. Every time a monkey went up the ladder, the scientists soaked the rest of the monkeys with cold water. After a while, every time a monkey went up the ladder, the others beat up the one on the ladder. After some time, no monkey dared go up the ladder, regardless of the temptation. Scientists then decided to substitute one of the monkeys. The first thing this new monkey did was go up the ladder. Immediately, the other monkeys beat him up. After several beatings, the new member learned not to climb the ladder, even though he never knew why. A second monkey was substituted, and the same occurred. The first monkey participated on the beating for the second monkey. The replacements repeated until what was left was a group of 5 monkeys that, even though never received a cold shower, continued to beat up any monkey who attempted to climb the ladder. If you asked the new group of monkeys why the beatings took place, the answer would probably be,
well, I don't know. That's just how things are done around here.
Well, I told you, I said, the colonials may have left us in 1960, but they left a program behind. And that program is based on the mark of the beast. It's a predator-prey principle. That's why we have things like, I pass my neighbor. That's why we are the way we are. And I'm saying to you that what you see today called the Boko Haram, the Fulani narrative, go into colonial archives, the Mangin papers from the French countries. They wrote to the colonial British authorities that what is happening in Nigeria today would happen. This was even before our independence, way before. So what am I saying to you? We are without excuse. To beat what is happening to Nigeria right now, there are 4 things that are needful. 1, we need a superior ideology. 2, we need a superior value system. Value system. Value system. Number 3, we need a superior architecture of thought, which is 12 steps ahead of the program, not 2 steps ahead. And finally, we also need to equip the Nigerian military with adaptive strategies, military strategies. That's the only way they can beat this new threat, which was composed to destroy nations from within. The military aspect is only 16%, and that's why Nigeria has come to a place where the military can't do anything more than they have done already. Right now, we are being beaten hands down because the architecture of thought needed is not available. Now, again, why do I say that God is going to ask his church? I challenge you, as we close this session, to read Acts chapter 4, verse 13, and find out that when you have been with Jesus, don't tell me you can't see through the strategies of the enemy. Bible says they looked at Peter, James, John, and looked at and took note that these were unlearned fishermen, ignorant men. But when they heard them, they took note that they had been with Jesus. Go and read the book of 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and tell me that that's a book written by a fisherman. When you have been with Jesus, not when you are being a prey under a predator, when you have been with Jesus, it does something to your intellect. We will make it in this nation. The light will shine, the darkness will fall. But those of you who are listening to me, you are a game changer, and we're going to meet you again by the grace of God. This time, tomorrow, 12 o'clock, we're going to start again, and we're going to be sharing why you are the game changer. It's our duty to equip you, to ignite you, to help you to gain certain understandings so that you can fulfill the purpose that God has for you. You are the one who matters in this nation called Nigeria right now. And don't forget this, it's a global challenge. So all nations of the world are waiting to see the nation that will bring out the solution.